Hey, Coach Dave.
Hey, Coach Mike. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm excited for the conversation today because it's like so big, we can't even scratch at the surface, and it's also an inevitable factor of human life. So it's why not take a stab at it?
That's right. That's right. It's one of those things that we grapple with without always knowing what it is that we're grappling with. So we're
Yeah,
talking about identity, right? And this is something that, as coaches, it's inevitable that it comes up. We're working with clients that are trying to achieve goals and live their best life and maybe deal with difficult things in their life. And you follow this path and you inevitably lead to the idea of identity. And it's striking that despite knowing the definition of it, we often, at one time or another, don't know who we are. The
yeah,
process of discovering that, can be transformative.
yeah, yeah. And it gets even stickier and uncomfortable and more uncomfortable when we introduce the reality of transitions and upheaval that happens in over across the lifespan. Um, and the how we lean on identity to get through times of uncertainty, while at the same time the uncertainty affects our sense of identity, even to the, you know, extent that while when we are employed, we may call ourselves a product manager. And the moment we are unemployed, we somehow magically stop calling ourselves a product manager. Yet for the last 7 to 12, 15 years, we were a product manager, right? Just as an example of how we are so quick to glom onto and let go of uh, perhaps the more superficial definitions, at least, of identity, which is not to say it's like wrong to call yourself what you are professionally. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's one of your factors.
Right. Right. It provides safety and certainty to say, I am what I do. But the reality is it's more complex than that. What is the thing about you that endures from one context to another? Your,
Great
you know,
point.
your identity in a particular job is assigned to you. You have a title that is your professional, your career identity in a sense in that period of time.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you get laid off. And well, I'm no longer a product manager. Well, first of all, is that really true? And then second, what else? Who else are you?
Yeah.
And how are you going to leverage that to navigate the uncertainty that you just found yourself in?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what happens is that, in uncertainty, we tend to try to go quickly to a thing that provides us some certainty or some safety. And we start to identify with maybe groups or ideas that we don't necessarily feel it, but it's just safe.
Yeah. And the nuances, it's very interesting. Like in the same breath, I could say, I am a product manager and I am angry.
Yeah.
Like, how can I use the same phrasing to say two wildly different things? And what do they each mean, sort of as interacting with each other in some sense? Because I am a product manager. What I'm actually saying is, for the last 17 years, I have done product management work,
That's right.
right? And when I say, and I am, let's say, for example, I was just laid off. I am angry. I am angry. Okay, well, anger is an emotion and emotions are fleeting. They like it actually takes an incredible amount of energy to sustain the particular feeling of anger. Like that's a hardworking one. Um, so are you how is your identity shaped by the experience you're going through? Right? It's broad kind of it's not a question that you or I can answer in any sort of like permanent clinical sense, but it is like an inquiry that someone going through a time of change, a relationship change, a layoff, a death in the family, that um, actually a really interesting way of looking at this might be if you let's hope and assume that you have loving parents and they've been there by your side. And unfortunately, one of them passes away. For me, like this happened with me with my dad 4 years ago. I still believe I am my father's son, right? And one could take that same definition of the identity with regard to my parent, and you could apply that as well to a career. Like I just lost my job as a lawyer. I'm still a lawyer.
Right.
And I think when one has a sense of purpose and that the professional function deeply clearly serves the purpose, it's much easier to hold on to that identity in a healthy way, not like a narrow-minded way, but healthy. Like, damn it, I'm a lawyer and I know that I change people's lives as a result of my work. Okay.
Right.
I left that law firm, but I am still a lawyer. Damn it.
Right.
That's like so powerfully useful in a time of change and uncertainty a useful way to lean into identity.
Yes, that's very wise. Um,
I got a few. Not many, but a couple.
yeah, yeah, I really like that. I like yeah, it's declarative. You know,
Yeah.
it's not assigned to you. It's something that is kind of innate. Um, and lawyer is still a label for things. There's a bunch of traits that you have that maybe make you a good lawyer, and it's great to get in touch with us. We talked last time we had one of these chats. We talked about the power of writing your story,
Mm-hmm.
and in that case, I was being almost literal about it, saying the story of your life. It's got a bunch of chapters and epilogue, but there's science behind it. There's narrative identity theory, which states that we integrate our experiences and we build our identity by telling a story and not literally writing it necessarily, but we weave a story in our minds that tells who we are based on our experiences. And this is probably why things like journaling can be really effective for people because
Yeah.
you're reflecting on who you are.
Yeah.
And then there's the same theory talks about how we sometimes lack the environment that helps us or that provides the support for us to weave these stories to really know who we are.
Yeah.
And particularly whether it's an upbringing or the uncertainty of losing a job, for example. Now you're in this kind of limbo.
Yeah.
And like, going to listen to you talk about who you are or demonstrate who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that setting for the way I would describe it perhaps is the prioritization and incentivization of self storytelling when we're children. The psychological science tells us that children that have not had storytelling modeled for them namely by parents, but teachers, supervisors, whatever, um, when it's not modeled, there's no opportunity for the child to create the muscles and the muscle memory to access self storytelling. And the kind of classical definition of identity is this story we tell ourselves about ourselves.
Mhm.
And if you have never been instructed or shown the way to tell that story about yourself, I'm not surprised that there are millions of people that are uncomfortable with the idea of journaling. Oftentimes folks that are uncomfortable with the idea of journaling, they may say like, well, I don't know how to talk about myself. I don't want to talk about myself.
Right.
It's like, cool. You're at a time in your life
Mhm.
when like your boss, your wife, your husband, the world, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is telling you to know yourself better. And as uncomfortable as it may be to do an exercise or regular exercise like journaling, it's important and it will reveal more to you than it honestly like the act of journaling is a bit of the reflection in the writing, but the payload is when you revisit it and understand yourself in a different way than you did the day before that journal entry. Um, and that said, I understand how it can be so uncomfortable for people because they might not have had that modeling when they were younger. They might not have had somebody that came home and said, man, my day at work looked like this. Let me tell you these 3 stories about my colleagues and one of my clients, right? And then like 4-year-old Dave could go like, that's what storytelling looks like. Okay, let me tell you about how school went,
Right.
which like I was one of those people that didn't have a lot of that.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a takeaway from this. Well, more than one, but one is um, surround yourself with people who will receive your story,
Yeah.
right, and create space for it. We don't always have that, particularly in the workplace. Like, you don't have complete control of your environment, and maybe you have leaders that have created enough safety where people can be who they are, express who they are, and find their and mesh their identity with the purpose of whatever organization they're in. If you have that, consider yourself lucky and take advantage of it.
Yes.
Otherwise, seek out
Yeah.
your people, so to speak. And they don't have to be like you or even part of the same group, but the common trait is we have a curiosity about who we are and who our friends are. And that can sort of compensate, for the situations that we find ourselves in where we don't have the freedom to tell our story.
Yeah. Yeah. The the work I would say the workplace and a home environment with a spouse is we're almost well, I'll speak for myself at various points in my life and clients that I've talked to, like who have expressed that we crave people to be curious about our story, right?
Yeah.
We want people to know our identity. And what is that about?
Right.
Right? Like maybe a check-in, maybe something to like make that inquiry useful for anyone watching is um, do you need others to know your story so that you have the chance to externally process what it might be? Or do you need others to know your story to validate what you believe it to be?
Mm.
Or like, is it okay to just have an inner sense of your story and also an appreciation for the fact that it literally changes by the hour?
Right. Right. Yeah. I heard someone say a kind of a self-deprecating joke about coaching. It's like, someone can just talk to a wall, and it's better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to diminish the role of a coach. It's way more than that. But there is a little bit of truth to that. Like, doing nothing is significantly worse than literally standing in front of a wall and talking to it. Like, hearing what comes out
Yeah.
is it that itself can help you navigate that. And I've had people tell me that sometimes my role in the coaching relationship is kind of like a mirror.
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not judging. It's not about what I think about
Yeah.
who that person is. I'm not validating necessarily what they're saying to me. I'm just saying I'm noticing. Hey, did you notice what you said? Isn't that interesting? How does that apply to your goals? And then it's just like snaps them into the present. Like, oh wow, there's
Yeah.
something there. That's who I am.
So let's do a little experiment.
Mhm.
Let's try this. Um, and it takes a little bit of imagination, just a little bit. Um, you are a coach who lives in Colorado and you see X amount of clients from around the US. Um, what is your identity in that context?
Mm, right. Okay. Um, a few things come up. Uh, there's creativity. So I creative when I in the noun sense of the verb. I am a creative. Um, I am a deep feeler and thinker. Uh, I'm an explorer, everything I hear, it sparks curiosity. I have trouble just staying on the surface. Mm, and sort of maybe something a little bit more tangible. It's sort of maybe this is a cliche, but it's like a lighthouse. You know, I talk about illuminating what I am hearing
Mm.
without adding my own stuff to it. Uh, yeah, that's interesting experiment because
Second
that's
phase of the experiment.
okay.
The internet is taken away from you. You know absolutely no one in your town, and therefore you have no one to coach.
Mm.
What is your identity in that context?
I love this. Uh, it's shifted. I think if you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said something like, I I would have said, I don't know to start with.
Mm,
That's
awesome admission, man. That's fuck yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Now, because of the relationship I have with myself through doing this work, um, that doesn't change. And in fact, I might actually, and in fact, I have done this, which is literally look in the mirror and say the things that I said a couple minutes ago. Say them to yourself. I am still an
Yeah.
explorer. I am still a deep feeler and thinker. I am still a creative. That hasn't changed. But it would be unimaginable 5 years ago
Yeah.
for me to say I was a software engineer, and I might have said I'm also a musician because it's another parallel track of my life. And in the absence of that, I would have said, I don't know. Let me go think about that. And it's as I say it, I feel the tension and the heaviness of that. Like I was lost in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like now, if all coaching was, all coaching opportunities as a vocation were taken away from you, you would still feel strongly about the way you identify yourself. And it would be the implementation of those qualities that is lost. Like,
Mhm.
I can't apply them at the moment, but darn it, I know I am this,
Yes.
which is like, I don't even know what to do with that. I just find it, uh, well, a follow up question I had for you is what had to shift in you in order for you to have the confidence in the way you identify yourself?
Uh, I think a major part of it was something I alluded to a couple of minutes ago, which is surrounding yourself with the people who want to hear your story
Mm,
and tell you their story. Mm, I did a career pivot a few years ago, and it was something I wanted to do, but I had no idea how transformational it would be. Obviously, it brought me fulfillment to do a thing that I love, but the people I found myself surrounded by maybe were more impactful than changing my career completely.
yeah.
It's just, and I still, even now, as I went through training and certification, I gained a new community, which I'm still a part of, even though we're not students anymore. I still talk to all these people, and we do this. I feel so charged up about who I am when I'm with the people that I went through this journey with.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to do a career pivot or become a coach
Yeah.
to do
No, I
this.
think you could speak to, I mean, there's a lot of people that do coach training that never even leave their job at all. They do it to become more holistic leaders, mentors, managers, partners, etc.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So I'm I'm curious um, about the idea of our identity. There's different kinds of identity. There's like what was assigned to us by others.
Yeah.
There's what's innate, and then there's kind of what's aspirational about you. And I'm curious. I know you well now. What was assigned to you as you were either growing up or entering the workforce?
God. Well, I think they are, man, what a great question. My instinct is to say I think they're pretty different, um, but maybe not in some ways. And it also depends on the assigner.
Yeah.
When I was a child, what was assigned to me was rambunctious,
Yeah.
um, disorganized, a problem. Yeah, I mean, like you could toss me on the couch and I could talk about this for hours, but like, you know, your billable rate's probably too high for me. But yeah, it was and funny and curious.
Mhm.
And this all actually taps into something I was just creating. I created this 2 weeks ago and I just gave it to my first client who said it was a rather powerful experience for her, which is this uh, self exploration I called reclaiming your clown. So when I was a kid, the thing I was afraid of the most was that I was perceived perceived as a clown. And at times, like I actually was afraid I was like a clown. Now, I got the title class clown a
Right.
lot, which only exacerbated the
Right.
fear, right? And in adulthood, I carried that insecurity with me. And basically, the reclaiming your clown exercise is a process of writing down the name of the objectification of the thing you're afraid of being, which for me was clown, and then using every letter in that word as an acronym uh, to write out a bunch of virtuous elements of yourself that you believe about yourself or that other people have told you. So you're really like taking this disgusting character that is an unavoidable part of your psyche identity
Mhm.
and reframing it, reclaiming it, so you can use it for good for you, and you can kind of throw your arm around it like a best friend.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say to encapsulate what my identity was as a young person, to some extent, it was like the fumbling, noise making, attention grabbing clown that some people wanted in the room and some people really didn't. And as I got older, I had a fear that that was my external identity.
Mhm.
And I made a lot of decisions that were to overcompensate for the possibility that I would be clownish in any room I walked into.
Right.
Um, so about 5, 6 years ago was when I did this exercise completely accidentally, organically of like reclaiming my clown. And then I just codified it in a worksheet recently. But yeah. And then as I got older though, the answer would be Dave is trustworthy, hardworking, funny.
Mhm.
I don't know how to turn this into a noun, but like lacks attention span.
This.
uh, and vital to a group setting, which is kind of crazy when I think about how my life in daycare from 9 months old until about 10 years old, like made me lost, made me feel completely lost in the group setting and devalued and um, somewhat non-existent in the group setting. And then like somehow I'm a value add to the group setting. I haven't quite reconciled that yet, but yeah.
Yeah. So you've gone from the assigned identity, and you said a few words there, and then now you're getting to what's innate. Like
Yeah.
no one had to tell you these things about you. You know them through self-reflection. What had to shift for you to embrace that and to sort of shed what was assigned to you?
I needed therapy and coaching to help me understand, to help me disassociate fact from fiction. Honestly, a lot of it was just like that was learning how to disassociate facts from fiction, of which the ratio is like wildly askew. Like there's probably one fact for every 300 fictions we tell ourselves or something like that in any given situation. And the uh the disparity grows with the more consequential the situation. So like I'm falling in love with a girl. All the facts are like, excuse me, the facts are like right here.
Yeah.
She is a girl. I believe I love her. I am a man. My name is Dave. Like those are the facts, right?
Yes.
And all of this is the fiction surrounding the facts, doing me absolutely no favors at all to try to like stay rational and reasonable. And in some cases, like sabotaging my opportunity with one or two girls. And in other cases, when I got it under control, actually elevated the experience for both of us. So um, yeah, I think therapy and coaching, reframing, cognitive reframing, um, and also reps. Like there,
Hmm.
one thing is, uh, and I had a client mention this to me the other day. The client said, "I'm also seeing a therapist, and I'm in this gear with the therapist where almost all I do is ask why about my past, and yet I'm a very action oriented person. And the action I take allows me to gain momentum. And then the momentum gives me the confidence that I can handle change." I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm not like therapy is vital for many people, including myself in the past. So I'm not saying anything to disparage that. It's just how can you take your identity and then implement it in a way that can reflect it back to you in a useful way. And there, I'm just going to wrap this up, but there are a lot of neuroscientists that believe like identity is uh, a it's an illusory joke, like it's not real. And I've actually done some meditation that has revealed to me that in some contexts, identity isn't real. Like my brain, I don't even know if the brain is real, right? We can go there. The point I am trying to make though is that to the extent that you are stuck with grappling with identity, why not use it? Why not leverage it as much as you can?
I love that. I love that. You're kind of touching on kind of the third thing I said about aspirational identity, and and I love what you said about sort of the experimental nature, like doing reps.
Mm,
You know, when, for example, so if you think about identity based habits, you know, people
yeah.
they want they want an outcome, and so we tend to set goals that are outcome focused, which can be short term effective, but you don't. You're like, what are you becoming as you establish these habits in service of a goal? And then there's a spectrum. So on the far end, it's well, you just declare. So instead of I'm gonna lose 15 pounds, you say to yourself, I am now an athlete. What would an athlete be doing at 9 in the morning? Uh,
Yeah.
that sounds great. And it might work as well, but it's a sort of delusion that that you have to some people can live in there. And so somewhere in the spectrum is what you were talking about. It's well, a couple of things. One is what do I bring? What from my past in my story did I demonstrate that I could apply to being an athlete, so to speak?
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of trying it on in a sense, not emulating or imitating someone that maybe has a different story in different contexts. But it's like, well, okay, I'm gonna get up at 8, 7 in the no, let's say 5 in the morning. I'm gonna chug some raw eggs, go for a run, right? And not to be tied to a particular outcome. It's like,
Yeah.
here's a bunch of stuff I'm gonna try. And
Right.
ones that stick start to show you, oh, this is who I am in the context of being an athlete or being healthy or being feeling better
Yeah.
in a way.
So I think I want to plug into that this idea of that I can't think of any other way to describe, but like our quiet identity. Like uh, I'm trying to describe my quiet identity. Let me try this. Let me try this on. My quiet identity is deeply, deeply caring person who is very sensitive and a dynamic human being that loves a lot of different things that don't make a lot of sense. Simple. Boom, done. Like that is actually my quiet identity. That it's almost freaking impossible for me to it would be just weird for me to meet up with some new folks in my town at a bar and they say, "Hey Dave, what are you all about?" And then I say that to them, right? Like, and yet that is the simplest way I could kind of that's just the simplest way I could describe who I am, my identity.
Right.
And it's I'm gonna go back to the folks that have been experiencing a layoff, like self-reflection. I'm not even like articulating myself very well here. So let me try this again. Like if you have been laid off, yes, you need to get another job if that is what your total life and financial security requires of you. But do not miss the opportunity to listen to your quiet identity
Mhm.
because it will tell you all you need to know. Like everything else in terms of like your decision making and consequences that you're now living with as part of like just what your life is. Don't get too tightly wound if it's in misalignment with that quiet identity, but listen for the quiet identity. And then you can begin to start to make directional shifts to be in alignment with that.
Right. Yeah. There's a there's a power to that in the sense that as we are in the case of layoffs, for example, we're navigating uncertainty and there's this existential weight that comes with this. And so maybe we find ourselves with a bunch of opportunities. And, we're lucky that things present themselves to get us out of the state that we're in. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean you should just take them
Yeah.
just because, oh, it's a fix for my unemployment.
Yeah.
There is knowing really, like, really embracing your identity gives you a framework, sort of like what's a yes and what's a no. And the no
Yeah.
is sometimes more powerful than the yes. Something comes at you and it's like, well, this pays a lot of money and it utilizes a couple of skills I have. What the hell? Why not? But then if you look at, well, who am I and how does that match this? And then as you look at it, you might think, oh, this is a big fat no. But how would you get there if it was just the superficial? It's a job description, and here are the
Yes.
details. Oh yeah, I match on the
Yeah.
surface, and now I'm letting someone assign to me my identity because I'm in a bad place and I need to get out of it. And
Yeah.
I'll just take a default.
Yeah. And I'm going to repeat something that we said in the long version of our video, which is we have both experienced layoffs and being let go. So
Yes.
we are not saying this to anyone with a total absence of the real world responsibilities of like keeping financial continuity, ideally actually going up if you can,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So it's not that. It's more like it's um it's it and we're talking about something that's maybe a little bit even outside of identity in a way, but I could certainly slide it back but it's how much do you want to gain out of your layoff? So ideally, you get if a layoff happens, ideally you get a job tomorrow, right? Like you've got managers that are like, you know what, Dave's awesome. Mike was an amazing colleague and a great team player. and a very smart guy that we were lucky to have on our team. Anyone would be lucky to hire him. He has my full endorsement. Pop on a LinkedIn, share that with 50 companies, get 10 interviews, and you get hired, right? Like that's the ideal thing. But if there is any part of you that while you were at that job felt like, damn it, I wish when you had the luxury of wishing for more, when you had the luxury of being in a space of mental abundance, and you could say like, I wish I was doing this, or man, I would love to have X, like that doesn't have to go away. Get that job, plug it in, plug in the financial certainty, and then keep a tight hold on that like discomfort you had at the previous company
Right.
and explore it. And, now s- pulling back into the lane of identity, try to seek to understand what is the context of that wanting uh, within your quiet identity. Why did I want that? Right. Like, I'm going to give you a great example. I parted ways with the last company that I was at. And um, I immediately applied for a job that was related to like private equity portfolio research.
Mhm.
And I didn't get it. And like 3 weeks after I applied to it, I was like, thank God I didn't get that. Like that was not aligned with I have given myself the time for self reflection in order to see how like wild that was like a horror movie and I'm into comedy. We were just like not even remotely related to each other. And this is a time to explore that. So yeah, it's like I would hate to come across as though we're sounding like trite and irresponsible. There's real life stuff to worry about, especially when there are like children involved and a house to
That's
maintain
right.
and all that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
glad you clarified that because it can sound sort of like insensitive or tone deaf to think, oh yeah, you don't have a job, but don't take the first one that comes. This can apply even more broadly than just getting out of a bad situation. And in fact, there's sort of a pragmatic way to look at how your identity maps to what you're going to do if you look holistically. So if you think of the concept of Ikigai, which is, Japanese for reason for being, um, there are, if you think of a Venn diagram that tells you like things that I love, things that I'm good at, things that people need, effectively things you can get paid for.
yeah.
And we tend to go to the middle. It's like, what's the one thing that'll hit that sweet spot and all of my needs will be fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
It's unrealistic and it's a recipe for disappointment. Uh, it's okay to say, well, I'm going to take this job, and it falls somewhere in this Venn, not in the sweet spot, but here's something I'm good at, and here's something I get paid for, and maybe also something that people need. Maybe I don't love it. So what else do I love? And that's going back to this introspection and self reflection. What else could I bring into my life that honors my my passion, my identity, and maybe the aggregate of the things that you bring into your life lands you in that sweet spot. But we don't have to define ourselves by one thing that we do, or one group even that we're part of.
So some young people are fortunate enough to have parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents that ask them those questions, so they get to try on answers. And I'll use myself as an example of someone who like didn't really get asked that question, and except once or twice, and I just blacked out. Like I have no idea what I even said. And I don't want this to be misconstrued as saying that work should and companies should feel like families. I actually very much think they shouldn't
Right.
all. And also like probably half the population enters the workforce hating their parents and their family. So like all the more reason not to model that.
Right.
There is one element of it though that does seem significant, which is um, with regard to the narrative identity theory of that children whose who have storytelling and self-storytelling modeling done for them can help them understand who they are earlier in life, or at least understand how to effectively communicate who they feel that they are. And companies have an opportunity to keep great people longer if they create the space for this self-reflection.
Yeah.
Not in a way that like mom and dad would necessarily,
Right.
but in a very professional, appropriate setting where the employee is offered an opportunity for facilitated self-discovery and identity making,
Right.
especially at 28 and 36 and 49 and 58 years old.
Right. Right.
That can be a very that will at least be meaningful for the sector of the employee population that, to your point earlier, is just craving to have their story be heard.
Right. Right. Yeah, I love that. There are different ways that you can facilitate that for someone that works with you or for you. The direct way, or one direct way that I have used is to have someone describe to me essentially their peak experiences. It's, tell
Yeah.
me about a time when you felt you're at your best, and it does not have to be a professional situation. It could be anything in your life. And then we start to notice, it's like the thing about shining the light. I'm noticing you are or you are, and we start to fill in some blanks. Some people are uncomfortable with that kind of thing. So another thing I've done in the workplace is, you have in corporate situations, you set goals, individual goals for your employees, usually at the beginning of the year. Maybe you check in regularly. There's the obvious goals. You're a software engineering manager. You lead these 3 projects, and so you will deliver those 3 projects, in a timely manner and with high quality and on budget. And then I will say, I want you to name one more goal that we're going to write down. That has nothing to do with any of that, but you're going to do it here. And inevitably, what I get is something that tells me who that person is.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
give
And
me
I
an
hold them to.
example? Can you like recall an example?
Of yes, definitely. So for example, I had one person that reported directly to me who noticed the kind of the insular nature of all the teams. We had a whole bunch of teams under my organization. And even those didn't even know what the other ones were doing. They were curious. And so he did these, I forget, I think he called them lunch and learns. Right. So we buy lunch for 2 teams, and they talk to each other about what they do. And this is not a formal business presentation. This is like they're actually talking about what they enjoy about what they do. And it sparks some curiosity. And so now people feel better connected, both on
Mm,
a technical level, on a personal level. And then they also get a sense like, oh, wow, we're doing things here that I didn't know about. So they're excited for themselves and for the greater organization. And this grew. And so it went beyond my organization, and we started matching up with others. So in an entire site, we were just hundreds of people. Suddenly people were saying hi in the hallway because, oh, I really enjoyed your thing. And it's not even like a business networking kind of thing. It's more of like a human connection around a shared thing, which is, in this case, it was technology. And it's so defined the guy who implemented, like this was in his nature. He was a technically very competent person, but he had this aspiration to bring people together.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And a very useful application for creating uh don't want to use the word organic, but whatever the opposite of like the top down implementation of a culture, of a culture program. Like it wasn't programmatic in the sense that it was like, we're the HR, the ops department. We just purchased this software platform to implement across the workforce. And our KPIs are mainly around like utilization measured by minutes, you know, and that will determine whether we pay for this thing again in 3 years.
Yep.
This was just like, this was a manifestation of somebody's internal sense of identity tied with purpose in that work setting. Powerful, powerful stuff.
That's right. That's right. And
And didn't cost the company a dime,
that's right.
theoretically. Maybe they paid for some of the lunches, but like it didn't pay for, didn't cost $100,000 for like 1,000 licenses to some sort of platform.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because it also pays off in a way that you could quantify if you really wanted to. But just knowing that, that people like they get out of bed in the morning, they want to come to this place because they
Yeah.
can be who they are.
Mm.
And they're given the safety and the space to be that way. You could quantify it and productivity goes up, engagement, it's a popular word to use. It goes morale, I guess, goes up, retention goes up. And it didn't cost much relative to what it paid
Mm.
in return.
So if, yeah, I have a little thought exercise here where, again, in the realm of fiction, but if that gentleman was laid off, if I were him,
Mhm.
I would take my identity, purpose, and action alignment that I discovered in that work setting. I would find a way to manifest that through my job search process to make it feel my own. So it's not spray and pray with the resume like all over the internet. It's
Mm.
like, do I want to be the conven like if I were to give that individual an archetype, it might be the convener or the connector. So
Yeah.
this is an internal, deeply held part of that quiet identity as a convener and connector. How will I approach finding my new job in a way that is also like a net positive for the people around me?
Yes. Yes. I uh I see a lot of resumes. I did as a hiring manager and now as a coach, I sometimes help people with the resumes. And what I encourage is to reuse a theme of ours is storytelling. What do you want the reader to know about you? Because we tend to just treat a resume as a report. This is a report of all the things that happened, my responsibilities, the tools I used, the skills I applied. And there just tends to be not that much about who the person is and how that identity had an impact in the organization they were in. And so I tell them not to throw the whole thing away, but as you go through all those bullets that say, led a team, implemented a whatever, who were you being? Like, what did you bring to bear? And what was the actual impact? Because often it's just like, I did this and then I don't know what happened. And then you collect, a handful and create your highlight reel. So at the top, where we usually say a seasoned or an experienced architect with skills in X, Y, and Z. That's the assigned identity. It's like, well, what have you discovered in all your years of experience that it separates you, that differentiates you from the next candidate?
Yeah.
Well, tell your story. And it's just like what you said.
And one of the ways to access that is to hear your limiting beliefs and
Mm.
sideline them
Yes.
so that you are just unabashedly, unapologetically owning the impact you made.
Mhm.
No caveats. That was your impact. And if you need a reason or like a motivator for fully owning that impact, it's to honor your quiet identity.
Hmm. Right. Right. Wow. We can talk for hours about limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And so let's not this time, but I
Put a
will.
limit on,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I do want to say that, saying, I agree, like sideline it, the limiting belief, but how? It can be really powerful,
Yep.
right? And so it's a matter of, it's kind of accepting it.
Except it's like it to me, it is well, yeah.
Yeah.
Go on, please.
Well, in a sense, the limiting belief is kind of part of your identity.
Yeah.
It's not you. I might say, rather than saying I'm a perfectionist, I would say I have a perfectionist in me.
Yeah.
And he's always there. He's whispering in my ear, that's not good enough. Don't hit send on that email yet. That's not ready. And so it's a negotiation. It's kind of like if you had a difficult colleague in the workplace. They're your peer. You can't fire them, but you have to work with them. And they have a lot to contribute. They're just hard to work with because of whatever traits annoy you or slow you down. So it's a negotiation. How do you address what they need, which is usually fear based. For the perfectionist, I'm afraid of failing or being perceived as less than because this is not 100% perfect. And so it's a negotiation that you have with these parts. So by sidelining, you're not repressing. You're just like you're side by
Yeah.
side, but you're not being impacted by that belief that's limiting.
Yeah. And although there is one word you use that I would push back on a little bit, which is negotiating. And the
Mhm.
reason that I would do that is, and maybe it's just the form of negotiation,
Right.
but I look at when I have a mountain of limiting beliefs and my insecurity creeps in, etc. And when I hear this happening for a client, one of the things that I do is to go through a visualization exercise where you are running a film set as the director of a film,
Mhm.
and this actor or character has completely hijacked a scene. And this scene is required to move the plot forward. The way that this actor or character is affecting it cannot move the plot forward.
Right.
So you need to move, you need to kind of like gently talk to or slide this character, this actor over and say, look, we're paying you. We want you here and we're going to use you in the best possible moment for you. But this isn't it. Okay, let's get back to the scene. And so if you can, as cheesy as it sounds, go through that visualization exercise and put this character over off off screen for a moment
Right.
and get back to the tone and the vibe and the productivity and moving the plot along. That's one of the things that I actually do really love about coaching that is very different from therapy, which is as coaches, you are hiring us to help you move the plot along.
Yeah.
Like we are not here to dissect the past. We are here to understand the present, envision the future, and close the gap.
Yes. Yeah.
And identity plays a huge role in this because at times that identity, including the limiting beliefs part, can be a huge blocker to just creating the forward momentum.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, there's
Yeah.
my little diatribe.
There's something that I want to illuminate about what you were saying about being on this on the movie set. What you were saying that you would say to this other actor, woven into it is there's compassion.
Yes.
There's an
Yes.
acknowledgement of the
Yeah.
value that that person brings, right?
Yep.
You're not just, slapping him on the wrist. You're like, well, this isn't working, but you're appreciated here. We need you,
Yeah.
right? And the same, I mean, my inner perfectionist serves me. Like he can really limit me, right? But at the same time, it does to up to a threshold increases the quality of what I have.
Yes.
And I have to
Right.
acknowledge, thank you. But we're going to hit send on that email.
Yeah. Got to
You're going
move
to
the
be
plot
okay.
along.
Yeah.
Then the one other thing I would say in this metaphor of the film set is sometimes there are extras who are non-speaking paid actors that will not shut up and they are trying to like get their moment in the spotlight. And in that case, sometimes you need to fire them.
That's yes.
So like
Yes.
context matters and to the perfectionist in you, for example, who is vital to your process at times and the quality and reputation ultimately of your work product, your friendships, whatever, um, you need them at certain moments. But if they're not paid speaking actors and their only job is to like be a body in the background and they're getting too loud, yeah, you have to know when to get into the driver's seat as the director. And I might coin this phrase, move the plot along.
It's so interesting how we keep there's these themes. We started with identity, but like story is so powerful, and even the metaphors bring us back to the story. Yeah, it's really interesting. I there's something that I had you through your prompt earlier about like how do I hang on to my identity, and I talked about standing in front of the mirror and reminding myself what I was before some event is I'm still the same person, and then I've never it's not something that I brought into coaching. And what I mean by that is literally standing in front of a mirror. I mean, I act as one when I'm in front of someone, and that's an hour at a time. But
Yeah.
why not in those moments where it's like, well, I don't feel like writing, it's just look at yourself and say it or feel it, think it, like
Yep.
whatever. And it might even feel silly and uncomfortable, but discomfort, like get out of your comfort zone and just do a silly thing for a minute and see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That might be like a homework assignment for some of my clients.
I actually just assigned that to one of my clients last
Nice.
week. And
Nice.
um, part of their part of their issue is self-love. And so part of the assignment was to look in the mirror and say, I love you,
Yes.
name. You are adjective.
Hmm.
Say it 3 times, say it 3 more times with a different adjective. And
Right.
it was like so cringe,
Yeah.
just the most uncomfortable experience for this person. And that's part of why, like, there is no, that, like, that's not the end of
Hmm.
progress. That's not the end of coaching. That's like,
Right.
it's just a tool. It's just a step along the
Yeah.
way. And, yeah, you can even notice other things like how embarrassing it was, or just, you're sitting at home, you're alone, you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I love you, Dave. You are resilient. And then you go, God damn, that's uncomfortable. Like, have a laugh, you know? So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. I would add on to the exercise as I'm thinking about it. So to grasp the kind of the aspirational part of the identity, I love you. You are adjective. And what I want for you is, fill in the blank,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's sort of like it's this compassionate statement to yourself or to your reflection
Yeah.
of what you want to be.
Yep. So going back to just briefly, the neuroscience community that believes that identity is more or less an illusion and who may or may not be right about that. One fact that is true is if you see yourself in the mirror, you are there with yourself. Do something with it. Move the plot along. Say something positive. Make it up. Don't believe it right now. Keep trying. Come back tomorrow. Do it again. Like, this is self coaching. You don't ever have to hire one of us. You don't ever have to hire a coach. You don't ever have to talk to your manager or your spouse. But if you can just look yourself in the mirror and say the uncomfortable thing in a positive direction, you're working on identity.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I would advise the same people to use discernment in how they relate to the thing that they want to be. So for example, I was saying before, I want to be a writer, and so I go on social media and I look at other writers, and I try to just be them, right? And maybe if you reflect on what their identity is, there's facets, and there's some that serve you, and some is like, well, no, they have their own context and their own personality, their own identity, and use like find the nuggets of inspiration from outside. Don't just be someone else.
Yeah.
Take inspiration from others and then make it your own.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, should we wrap it there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love what I said, so why don't we just
I thought it was a gem myself. Very
uh,
good.
yeah.
You get the last word.
I get to watch. Yes. Yeah, it's always a joy
Yeah,
to do these. And I'm already looking forward to the next one.
me too. Knows what it'll be about. Some topic we're way out of our depth in talking about. We'll figure it out.
All right. So with
All right.
that,
Yeah. See ya.